Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the 2016 Global Innovation Summit, the largest innovation conference of its kind in the Middle East. My name is Rowan Roberts. I'm the innovation leader for GEMS Education, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first panel discussion of the day, and the focus is on roadmap to building the happiest city on the planet. Now, before we move ahead with the panel discussion, a quick announcement. There is the first business transformation workshop taking place right behind us, or right behind me, in the Silk Ballroom A. And the focus is on feel secured in the cloud, insights from a successful entrepreneur. So if you're interested in attending that workshop, please make your way to Silk Ballroom A, and that starts in 5 minutes. But coming to today's first panel discussion of the day, roadmap to building the happiest city on the planet. Well, contrary to what mainstream media tells us, the world is not getting worse. It is, in fact, getting better. Based on almost any single index you choose to measure, things are getting better, not worse. And we are living longer, healthier, wealthier, safer lives than at any point in the history of humanity. And happiness is increasingly being seen as the proper measure of social progress and the proper goal of public policy. Here in the UAE, we're at the forefront of things because we are one of the few nations in the world to have a Minister of Happiness. Currently, UAE is ranked 28th in the Global Happiness Index. But we aim to be top of the list by the end of the decade. Now, I'm sure most of us in this room have given some thought to what goes into the creation of the happiest city in the planet. Yes, of course, there's government policy and public policy, but there are other elements as well. Matters related to economics, psychology, education, healthcare, and so on. But underpinning all of it would be advances in science, technology, and innovation. Consider, for instance, the smartphone. The smartphone you hold in the palm of your hand is now 1 million times smaller, 1 million times cheaper, and 1,000 times more powerful than the supercomputers that the Pentagon had 50 years ago that was the size of a building and cost $60 million to build. Today, we have that computing power in our pockets. It has massively increased our access to communication and to information. So that's just one example of how technology is having a radical impact on our lives. Here in Dubai, we have the Smart Dubai office that looks to promote the happiness of the citizens of Dubai by promoting and adopting technological advances and by focusing on promoting smart mobility, smart environment, smart economy, and smart people. So here to talk about how to create the happiest city in the world, we have an amazing panelist, an amazing group of panelists, and I would like to introduce them in no particular order. Our first panelist is Ghazi Atallah, who is the CEO of NexGen Group. Please, a round of applause. We have Bilal Sabouni, who's the CEO of the American Business Council. We have Ms. Dalya Almuthanna, President and CEO of GE Gulf. We have Anne Le Guennec, CEO, Majid Futtaim Enova. We have Sulaiman Maazmi, VP of ICT Expo 2020, Dubai. And we have Dr. Ali Alazzawi, Head of Customer Experience and Design at Smart Dubai office. And our moderator for today's panel is Conor Griffin, who's the principal at Economist Intelligence Unit. Over to our panel.
So thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this session today. At the Economist Intelligence Unit, we focus much of our time on analyzing policy challenges facing governments around the world. In the last 2 to 3 years, one challenge that we've seen time and time again is happiness. How can you measure happiness? How can you grow it? Now, as mentioned today, we have a lot of intellectual firepower, 6 top people from the public and private sectors in Dubai and across the UAE. Dubai grabbed the attention on this topic globally in the last 12 to 16 months with the announcement of the Happiness Agenda, a new happiness minister, and various initiatives that you'll see dotted around the city, such as the happiness meters for government services. Now, in terms of logistics today, I'm going to give a very, very short introduction to the topic of happiness, less than hopefully 3 to 4 minutes, and then jump over to our panel for a set of questions and debate. We do really want to hear your thoughts as well, your ideas, suggestions, questions. So at the end of the panel, we have 10 to 15 minutes to hear those, so please note them down as we go. So to kick it off, what is happiness, right? I think most people in the room, hopefully, would probably agree with Aristotle when he said that the ultimate objective in life is to attain happiness, either for yourself, your family, your loved ones. Despite that, on a day-to-day basis, if we hear that a government wants to measure happiness, tell us how happy we are, and then try to improve it, often we react with a bit of cynicism. And I think this cynicism is largely misplaced for 2 main reasons. One is, if you think about how we traditionally evaluate a government performance, we often look at narrow economic measures like GDP. Now, I can't explain in detail here today, but if you want to assess how people are feeling in a country, whether their lives are getting better or not, GDP is not a very good measure of that. But second reason why the cynicism is misplaced is because actually today we have a way of measuring happiness, a way that's kind of scientifically backed and can be used by governments around the world to consider new policy measures, new services, but also used by the private sector as well. And it's usually referred to as well-being. Now, well-being is a bit of a broader concept, but essentially there's 3 main parts. So the first part is life evaluation. So if I asked all of you in this room today to imagine a ladder, like this one here, with 10 steps, number 10 represents the best possible life that you can see for yourself. 0 represents the worst possible life that you can see for yourself. Where would you place yourself on that ladder? You measure that across the whole population, and you have a very robust measure of life evaluation. A different concept that's equally important, related but equally important, is affect. So how often in your day-to-day lives do you feel positive emotions? Happiness, joy, contentment. And equally importantly, how often in your day-to-day life, perhaps this morning, did you feel angry, frustrated, fed up? Again, we can now measure these things using various surveys and tools. That becomes a measure of something else in society that's crucial for governments to track. And then finally, a last bit that often is missing in the debate about happiness is what we call eudaimonia, which is a word that essentially means the purpose that you feel in your life, if you feel a purpose, the sense of control you feel over your life. So while your life might be quite easy, free of stress, do you feel a sense of purpose every day in what you do and with your colleagues? So when we think about happiness, we think about well-being in this broader sense, but it's quite an abstract concept still. And so we have a panel of experts here today to talk about how can we move from this abstract concept into actionable initiatives, either in the private sector or in the public sector, or even amongst ourselves as individuals. So I'm going to throw the first question over to the person who's furthest away from me, Dr. Ali. So Dr. Ali, this all sounds well and good, but Dubai's government has to actually deliver an agenda that makes this actionable. So how does Dubai intend to make us all feel a lot happier?
I think you're right. This is, it's a bit lofty, and it's correct, but Dubai is well known, I'm sure all of us know here, for being much more pragmatic and on the ground. And so therefore, to follow His Highness's vision and agenda that he launched back in May to make the city the happiest city, we have to be more pragmatic about the whole thing. So the way we turned it around in the happiness agenda is to actually look at it from a needs point of view, rather than what the definition might be. We can sit here and talk about it forever with Socrates and the likes, but really what to do right now. So we turned it around into needs. So we've got a model of needs, A, B, C, D. So affect, as you rightly say. C is cognitive or evaluative, and D, deeper needs, which is the eudaimonia, the purpose, and so on. But of course, the whole thing has to be in the context of government. And government isn't just about just making life wonderful in the sort of abstract sense. There are some hygiene factors that need to be done in the sense of services, so they're basic needs. So that's the ABCD of needs. So if we focus the whole agenda on delivering these needs, then whatever your definition of happiness might be, the answer would be you'd have got it because we would have provided your needs. And in order to make sure that that is delivered, we have taken a very systematic approach to the whole thing. So the agenda is split up into projects. Obviously, there are lots of projects within it. One set of projects, there are 4 portfolios for the whole agenda. And it starts off with a discovery phase. So before I start making your life better, first of all, I have to know what your life is about. So during the discovery portfolio, those kind of projects are about needs assessment, baselining, finding out what certain definitions are, developing the scientific model behind the whole thing. That's what and also, for that matter, being aligned with the other government agenda, like the happiness minister's agenda and so on. So that's the discovery part. Then we would have to be able to measure. So there's no sense in trying to do something. If you can't measure it, you can't change it, right?
And you think you can measure it then? That's the key point.
Well, we can get away from the philosophy as well and get down to the brass tacks, and I'm sure you'll have seen the happiness meter. The happiness meter is just an overall concept. There's going to be lots of different aspects of the meter as we go along the agenda. And we've already started developing the different aspects of that measurement. So there are also measurements in the sectors, depending on what sector we want to address. Dubai is very varied in terms of culture and in terms of sectors. So we can't actually hope for one size fits all either. So part of the measurement is making these assessments in these buckets. And of course, interventions and change. So yes, we've discovered where we are, and yes, we're able to measure. Now we're going to have to affect things by making policies, by looking at the whole city transformation as well. And of course, there's the awareness. So part of the agenda is to actually spread awareness about these things and others, so that it's a cultural shift that we're looking for rather than just a quick fix.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I mean, the interesting takeaway there is that not only can you measure happiness and well-being, but you can link it to policies and services. So in the future, you can track, are you actually having an impact through your policies and services on those measures? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's about impact at the end of the day. It's not about giving everybody ice cream and hoping for the best, really. So.
Sadly. Okay. At that point, I want to jump over to Ghazi. So the topic overall of this is a roadmap. And if you look at that, again, definition of happiness and well-being, one thing we can all agree is very, very broad. Lots of different things could affect it. So bringing all these things together in a roadmap, what are the different key components that you see based on your experience?
Yeah, it's very interesting because happiness is a moment in time, or it's sustainable. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about a roadmap towards sustainable happiness, because you want to, of course you want to measure happiness at a point in time, but you want this to actually be sustained and continued. And the way you could do that is, of course, by improving quality of life, or contributing to elements that improve quality of life, that provide economic opportunity, which in turn will impact happiness. And things that we're doing here with the government of Dubai and other governments is to build a roadmap towards that. And the fundamental building blocks of this roadmap, of course, there's some elements that are technology innovation, some elements that are policy, policy towards how do you actually put in place the right services with the right experience, but also policies around sharing the responsibility of happiness with the private sector. So bringing in the private sector and giving them the building blocks and the tools and the data, very importantly, so that the private sector can innovate and of course contribute towards happiness. Because this is a shared agenda. It's not something that the government can do on their own, and it's not something that the private sector can do on their own. So it's creating that environment and that roadmap that enables the private sector as well as the government jointly to contribute towards the happiness agenda by providing the fundamental building blocks, policy, data, technology platform, as well as a focus on experience.
And that focus on experience then, if you look at it in a global sense, people often say, we're seeing a new era of, let's say, private sector services that are really user-centered.
Yes.
You can take your pick of what your preferred one is. But within the government, and thinking about happiness especially, our experience of interacting with the government through services, you know, how does that link between the private and the public? How can that happen? So how can the public learn from the new era of user-centered services in the private sector and imbue it in the public?
Yeah, I think Dr. Ali touched upon this, but the key point today, it's not enough to have a particular government service that suddenly is e-enabled, it's online, and eventually it's mobile-enabled, it's on your device. That's not enough because it's the same thing that you're doing that you used to do on the counter that you now do electronically than now you do on your mobile. We actually have to think differently, and the discovery element is what are the needs? What is the experience that I would like to achieve? What are the needs from a personal standpoint versus a government process or a government service standpoint, so that then I can do what I need during my day that improves my quality of life and improves my experience overall. So that's where we have to switch things around and think about the resident of Dubai, the visitor of Dubai, the businessman in Dubai, and look what are their needs and what kind of experience would they like to have as they do